have been in the colored gemstone industry for a very, very long time. Colored gemstones are from exotic locations, I should say. I ran the Tanzanite Foundation for many, many years here in New York, where I've been for 20 years. I am originally from South Africa, which is where I started my career. And since then, I've pretty much been involved in colored gemstone marketing, mine-to-market strategy, corporate social responsibility, and various different aspects of our industry. And that's what I've been doing pretty much for the last 20 years, other than a short stint in the diamond world, which for all of you diamond girls out there and gentlemen, I have to say, a girl loves a sparkle and I love diamonds, but colored gemstones for me is really where the storytelling lies. And the more exotic the location, the better. So as you can see, I am wearing red today, ruby red, because not only do we associate gemstones with origin and location, but we very much associate them with color. And appropriately enough, I think that even if people don't know very much about a ruby per se, they know it's red, put it that way. And if we talk about ruby red, a color does spring to mind. So I am decked out in my ruby red. I am wearing more jewelry today than I've worn in the last 5 months, I should say, or 6 months. So forgive me for being a little bit overdone, but I just couldn't help myself. I have earrings from Dorothys. I don't know how clearly you can see them, but anyway, I have them on. They're gorgeous. I am wearing a Greenland Ruby cocktail ring by Erica Courtney. I am wearing a Tahitian pearl and ruby bead bracelet by Ulrich Hartmann, our Danish retail partner. And I did think it would be a little bit much, but here is my ruby pendant, also by Erica Courtney. But I didn't put that on. I thought, maybe that's a little bit much, but it's not really, I suppose. Anyway, so that's my introduction. Thank you for being with us today. And like I said, I'm going to be talking about Greenland Ruby. And also in doing a presentation like this, it's very difficult in preparation with knowing who one's audience is. I, of course, doing this through WJA, but is our audience gemologists? Are they GIA students? Are they designers? What aspect of our industry is the audience from? And even, are there people in this audience today who are not in our industry? So I've planned what I think is a pretty sort of general presentation. And of course, I have about 40 minutes to do that. So I'm going to whip through everything and we'll have some Q&A at the end. But like I said, it's pretty general, just giving an oversight on rubies in general, more specifically the rubies from Greenland, and even more specifically why I think, or why I propose that the rubies from Greenland are indeed the gems for a new generation. What makes the rubies from Greenland gems for a new generation? And that's sort of also quite an interesting discussion in itself. If there are any questions, we'll have time at the end. And then, of course, you can always reach out to me either through our social media or directly via email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you've got. So without further ado, let me skip to my presentation and let's get started. So I am doing, because of the way the Zoom is set up, our new normal, I am going to be flipping between me and my presentation as we go along. So I'm apologizing in advance if there are any hiccups, but thanks to my fantastic assistant, I hope that there won't be. So without further ado, let me skip to my presentation. And like I said, rubies are red. And I, over and above everything, everybody knows that rubies are red. And over and above origin, rubies are red, and this red is associated with so much. And now while we're talking about July being a birthstone month, also, this color red springs to mind. And red is mostly associated with things like courage and sacrifice, seduction, sexuality, and as well as some of our most intense emotions like love and passion. And it is no wonder that ruby is considered the most powerful gemstone in the world. And ruby's brilliance and radiance has captured the imagination of human beings throughout history. And if any of you know the history of rubies or colored red gemstones in general, in the olden days, anything red was believed to have been a ruby. Of course, in more recent times, upon research, we now understand the differences between different red stones. But once upon a time, everything red was considered to be a ruby. And the fascination with the color of this gemstone has indeed created lots and lots of legends and lore over the centuries, from the Hindus and Chinese ornamenting themselves on their armor to bestow protection, to the Greeks who considered that rubies are the zest for life. Of course, that's the Greeks, right? The Burmese who adorned their bodies with these bright gemstones to grant themselves invulnerability, and up to the present day interconnectivity between these gems and the power of love. So on to my next slide. These myths and legends have found their way in more recent times into performances and films like Dorothys' Ruby Red Slippers in The Wizard of Oz, which you can see here on my screen. And of course, I couldn't resist Lady Gaga here in her ruby red coat, which I think she's referring to when she says here, if I decide to make a coat red in the show, it's not just red, I think. Is it communist red? Is it cherry cordial? Is it ruby red? Or is it apple red? Or the big red balloon red? So, red has these connotations, but ruby for sure is associated with the color red. So just as I already explained, while discussing or thinking about this presentation and gems for a new generation, I'm going to be talking the next 40 minutes very generally, but more specifically about why Greenland Ruby is our gem for the next generation. Can everybody hear me? Oh, everybody's on mute, so I can't hear you, but thank you. Thumbs up is all I really need. Thank you very much for that. Okay, great. So I am going to keep going through my presentation, and I'm going to whip through because time is fleeting. So I'm speaking generally about the world of rubies, and here is a map of the world. And you can see that rubies come pretty much from a couple of different locations, despite being one of the rarest gems on earth. Rubies are mined in parts of Southeast Asia, Burma, which is of course the most famous of all the origin of rubies. Not very far from there, you have Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Traditionally, we have India and Pakistan, Sri Lanka, as well as Afghanistan. And then a more recent discovery were the rubies in Mozambique and in East Africa. Of course, it's rubies in East Africa. They mine almost everything there, as you probably know. But what thrilled me about this map when I found it, and I didn't make this map, I found it on the internet, of course, is that the rubies from Greenland, despite being a very recent discovery, are actually on this world map of ruby origin. So I'm absolutely delighted that our storytelling about the deposit in Greenland has actually made its way into these very important maps of gemstone, more specifically ruby origins. So here we are in Greenland, and if any of you don't happen to know where Greenland is, I'm going to just explain that a little bit now. It's this big icy landmass positioned midway between Europe and America. You've probably flown over it if you've traveled transatlantic. When you look down, you just see white. And yeah, that is Greenland. It is the biggest island in the world, approximately 5 times the size of France, but with one of the smallest populations per square mile. There are about 55,000 people living in Greenland, 35 of which work at the Greenland Ruby mining operation in Amphibolite, which is in the southwest of the country, very low down. You can see here on my slide, it is about 120 kilometers south of Nuuk. It is an hour by helicopter, and it is only accessible in the summer months by boat. The rest of the time we have to access by helicopter, and we fly from Nuuk. So this is a very isolated location, as you can imagine. But I have to tell you, it's a whole nother conversation. It is one of the most incredible places I've ever been to in the world, and I've done some travels, but I have to say that this is extraordinary. So, of course, with different origins come different geologies. And this is also one of the ways in which a laboratory is able to identify the origin of a gemstone. And in the case of rubies, these deposits, you know, are obviously associated with corundum, corundum being the parent mineral of ruby and sapphire. In this case, the geology is either of a primary or a secondary type deposit, which can also require a much greater explanation. But seen in my slide here is two different types of deposit. You've got a high iron, low fluorescence from a basalt-related deposit like in Thailand or Cambodia. And then on the right-hand side of the image, you've got a low iron deposit, which has the opposite. It has very strong fluorescence from a marble-type deposit, like what we find in parts of Burma, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and actually what we have in Greenland. The host rock in Greenland is Amphibolite, which is a secondary deposit. And I am going to show you exactly what that looks like. I'm just skipping now to my next slide, and I've got a quote here from Vincent Pardio, who is, as I already explained, our field gemologist. He's one of the most renowned field gemologists in the world. You probably already know that. And Vincent has visited the mining operation a number of times, and he says that geologically speaking, it's what he sees in Greenland is very similar to what he has seen in Mozambique. And Vincent's also very involved with the deposit in various parts of Mozambique. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop my screen share because I want to show you this, because I'm turning this into a little bit of a show and tell, and I hope that you can see this clearly. This is a 3 billion year old Greenlandic ruby specimen. It's an extraordinary piece of rock. I mean, just to hold it is unbelievable. I have it in my office here in New York if you ever want to stop by and touch and feel for yourself. But what you can see is the ruby here in the host rock. You can imagine that this is extremely difficult to extract, which makes mining in Greenland extremely challenging, very high tech, I should say, which also contributes to why I consider this deposit and this gemstone a gem for the next generation, because it is an extremely high-tech operation. But please, this is how it looks. It's not often you see something like this, and yeah, I just wanted to show you. I've got a couple pieces here in the office. You might have recently seen on our social media. Somebody was in here, Melissa, a couple of months ago, photographing this incredible specimen. And you can see the corundum, the ruby here in the Amphibolite host rock. Just something also that I wanted to add about that is that this is the oldest rock in the world. It is nearly 3 billion years old, which makes it, 4 or 5 times older than that of any other ruby deposit in the world. It's absolutely extraordinary. And despite being the oldest gemstone deposit in the world, it is the Greenland Ruby mining operation is by far the most sophisticated processing plant in our industry. So the entire spectrum is really makes the project absolutely phenomenal. So there we go. I'm just watching the time because I've got quite a lot more to go through, but I did indeed want to show you some of that. I'm going to skip now back to my presentation because I want to keep going. So I did mention a little bit of origin, other origins, and of contrast is a secondary deposit, which is what you're seeing here in countries, deposits such as what we find in Mozambique, the Montepuez mine, where the rubies are just a totally different structure, and they are a result of millions of years of chemical weathering. This is what's known as a secondary deposit. Whereas, as I explained, the deposit in Greenland is a primary deposit, and this is basically, you know, part of what you get when you sort of look down over what we're seeing. And these gems, as I explained when I showed you the host rock, these gems have been trapped in the rock for billions and billions of years, and erosion has done mainly by grinding action of glaciers, and there is no secondary deposit in Greenland. So I'm just stopping a quick share here too, because I want to explain that the other differentiating factor between rubies from different origins is, you know, how rubies are priced. And pricing very often is related to origin, as you know. And, you know, very often people say to me, how are rubies priced? And of course, this is $1 million question, because like all other gemstones, the pricing of rubies is done by carat and determined, you know, often by geographic origin, legacy, color, clarity, cut, size, etc., like other colored stones. But price premiums are achieved through things like rarity or responsible sourcing, production and supply chain transparency, effective marketing, and of course storytelling, which is what I am mostly talking about when it comes to the rubies from Greenland. But despite all of these different origins, I do have to just say that most processing of rubies gets done in Thailand. Interestingly enough, Thailand is known to be the ruby capital of the world. So despite the different origins, I would say that 99%, maybe even more, of all rubies at one time or another in their life find their way to Thailand, whether it's for processing or treatment or trading. The rubies themselves go to Thailand, if not to Bangkok, to a small town outside Bangkok called Chantaburi, which is where the generations-old trading is done. And again, it's a fascinating visit for any of the real gemology geeks out there. If you haven't been to Thailand, if you haven't been to Chantaburi, please put that on the top of your list. It's fascinating. But I touched briefly on treatments. And this is always, you know, for one reason or another, seems to be the elephant in the room, but it absolutely should not be. Most rubies, and I say most rubies, are treated. If you didn't already know that, that is a fact. And there are various different types of treatments, and there are reasons why these treatments are done. And in the case of the rubies from Greenland, it is our way of responsibly bringing these gems to market. I showed and I explained the very, you know, nature of the material, the hard rock deposit. It also means that these gems have inclusions, and the treatment is what creates stability and durability. Of course, there's various types of treatments, which I don't have time to go into now, but the treatment we use with the Greenland rubies is with borax. I can explain it, you know, at a different time, and you can see it on our website exactly how this treatment works. It is perfectly acceptable within our industry, and as long as it's disclosed. So disclosure is everything. Treatment is perfectly standard and perfectly acceptable. And I will say that glass filling is not acceptable in our industry, or if it is, well, I shouldn't say not acceptable in our industry, but a ruby that is glass filled becomes glass and not ruby. So there is a difference, and it's important to know the difference and understand these differences and know exactly what you're dealing with, what you're buying. So, you know, disclosure is everything. The other thing that makes rubies from Greenland really quite different from that of any other, which obviously I've pointed out a lot of differences up till now, but what we talk about when I speak about the rubies from Greenland is responsible sourcing. And all of you in our industry know that this is really the hot topic of the moment, you know, and really the key to why I believe that these rubies are a gem for a new generation, because all of our research has shown that our next generation of jewelry buyer and wearer is very concerned with where things are from and how they're sourced and what is going on in the environment where sourcing is done, what is going on during the journey or the lifetime of that gem, and not just the gem. I mean, of course, I'm here to speak about gems, but in general, this is the way our world is going, and goodness knows we've seen so many changes accelerated in the last couple of months. But for sure, in our industry, we are talking about responsibility, tracking and tracing, transparency, supply chain transparency, and this is where the Greenland Ruby really sets itself apart from any other gemstone on Earth. So, I think it's time for me to go back now to my presentation, so bear with me. I am going to share, and I'm going to move on now to exactly this, our responsible source, and what makes Greenland Ruby a responsible source. First and foremost, location, location, location. This is obviously key in a lot of things, isn't it? But I explained and I showed a little bit about the location of the deposit in an incredibly pristine environment where our license with the Greenlandic government ensures that everything we do in and around the mining operation is held to the very highest of environmental, health and safety, human rights, best practices. So you can only imagine what goes on there. And I'll just say that our garbage gets disposed, leaves the mining operation by helicopter. So I need to say no more. Just know that everything we do in Greenland is to the highest of Northern European standards. Actually, in case you're wondering, the deposit itself was actually discovered it's in a lake. So the lake has been dredged 10 meters, and this is where mining is taking place. It is it's not a underground mine. It is mining takes place on the surface. And when we have finished mining in that location, the water will be put back in the lake, and it will appear as if nothing went on there. So we will leave no footprint. So I think all of these aspects go a very, very long way in explaining this to the new generation who's very concerned with these types of things. And yeah, so just like I said, very high tech, everything is held at the highest, most sophisticated standards. The operation is owned by a Norwegian group, so I think that speaks volumes in itself. We employ an all Greenlandic staff locally in Greenland, 35% of which are women. So we've got quite an impressive operation going on there, quite frankly. The other thing that makes Greenland Ruby a responsible source is the fact that we started the Pink Polar Bear Foundation. And the Pink Polar Bear Foundation is our company's corporate social responsibility arm. Every gem that we sell at Greenland Ruby gives a percentage towards the Pink Polar Bear Foundation, which is concerned with international polar research in the Arctic region, specifically in Greenland. And this is not about polar bears, let alone pink polar bears. It is about people. It's about the local community, and it's about our mining operation in Greenland supporting the local population. So yes, let me move on. It's time for me to move on to my next slide, because you're probably wondering, what does this material look like? Let me whip through, and I'm just looking, I'm sort of halfway through, I think. How am I doing for time? I think I'm doing okay. I'm getting a thumbs up from Andrea. But just in case you're wondering, the color spectrum of what we produce at the mine ranges from the deep dark, what is known as pigeon blood red in our industry, although pigeon blood is mainly associated with Burmese material. But we have indeed had some our gems being called pigeon blood on a lab report, which let me just also quickly say that labs are able to determine Greenlandic material. So they do give origin as being Greenlandic. The Greenlandic material has specific fingerprint. It's the inclusions that are 3 billion years old, and it's really very, very specific to this location. It's easily identifiable, which also makes things very, very simple when it comes to origin reports. There's no confusion, and it also helps us with our track and trace, right? Because everything that comes from Greenland is most notably a Greenland Ruby gem. And so, back to color. We've got everything, as I said, that ranges from the deep pigeon blood red right through to the icy pinks, and even in some instances what we call snow white. And then you see here on the left of my slide also what we actually call our northern lights colors, which are our off colors. And yeah, these are some gorgeous colors of blue and gray, and this is just extraordinary material coming out of Greenland. And yeah, it's really quite fun seeing these beautiful variety of colors, and it's very unusual that one mining operation actually produces such a vast variety. So aren't we lucky? We're having great fun determining, you know, what the colors are. You can imagine. Also, you can see here, I'm just showing you my cabochons, because the nature of the material is that the gems lend themselves to gorgeous cabochons. Not only cabochons, and I'll explain that in a minute, but the crystal formation is actually also quite round, so the gems aren't flat. So the cabs are thick and juicy and gorgeous. And as you know, when it comes to pricing, you definitely get more money get more gem for your money with a cabochon. So this is what we really specialize in. And you can see a little bit here too on the slides, different shapes that we are working with. And we cut and polish all of our own gems. We do not sell rough. Everything we do is cut and polished, which also ensures our mine to market transparency and traceability. And we are able to, you know, control the supply chain right up until the point where these gems come into the hands of the designer or the manufacturer, and just steps away literally from the consumer. So having just said what I said, we do produce faceted gemstones as well, as you can see with this incredible ring by Erica Courtney. Could not resist putting this piece of jewelry into this presentation, because this is an extraordinary gem. If you think about it, it's nearly 25 carats, actually 2391 to be precise, but this is gorgeous. 3 billion year old Greenlandic ruby, nearly 25 carats, and it is an absolute stunner. And as you can see, this ring is absolutely fantastic, and it's a very good demonstration that we do produce faceted stones at great size, frankly. And I was lucky enough to wear this ring a couple of times, and well, you can imagine how that feels. So I just wanted to share that with you and show you that we do faceted stones. Although I want to say that our marketing message of being able to produce material consistently and in quantity is really about the cabochons. And this is what's going to make a difference to jewelry manufacturers and producers who need a reliable and consistent supply of gem quality ruby over time. Okay, this is another factor that makes us different from any other producer, is that we can guarantee this consistent supply of cabochon, calibrated cabochons, which is really goes a very, very long way for jewelry manufacturers. So just to talk a little bit about our marketing strategy, which is very, very interesting part of my discussion, because how how does one market a colored gemstone in our industry? How does one do that? It's not every day that we come across a new deposit of gem, let alone that that we get an opportunity to bring this to market. And how does one actually do it? Well, I have to tell you that there is no instruction manual on the best possible way to introduce these gems to market. But lucky me, I have the opportunity to start to talk about, or what I have been doing for the last 3 years is to talk about this gem with such an incredible story, and that's where it all lies, in this key storytelling. So that's what I've been doing. And as you can see here on this slide, lots of articles, lots and lots of research. My first step, I should say, was that I brought people to Greenland, people who I knew would need to do the research, who would talk about the research, who would write articles. And so over the last couple of years, we've had people like Vincent Pardieu, the GIA team, Vim Vitris, Andy Lucas, who's now with Guild Laboratories, the Lotus Gemologies, Billy Hughes and her dad Richard. These are the two real Ruby authorities. Klaas Scholenbach from Gubelin, to name a few, and multiple film crews, documentaries. You can find us all on our website and our YouTube channel, actually. But everybody that's come has been absolutely fascinated. So you can imagine we have a vast library of images and video and articles to document their journey of this most incredible gem. Of course, also, you know, in preparation for our market launch, one has to prepare marketing materials. Just the layout of our slide, my assistant Andrea insists that I only show 3 pieces of our work because I had them all, you know, all piled in one page, and she said, "Oh, no, we have to just, you know, cut this down a little bit just so that you get the idea." But of course, beautiful marketing materials go a long way to tell the story, and I think we've done a sterling job on our market launch marketing materials. And of course, you know, what else did we do? Sorry, I'm just jumping a little bit ahead of myself here. But in order to go into the market, we worked with a retailer in Copenhagen. Copenhagen being in Denmark, which is Denmark and Greenland have an association. Although Greenland does not belong to Denmark, they are associated. Greenland is an autonomous, you know, it's a country on its own, but it is indeed associated with Denmark. And so this retailer in Copenhagen wanted to be the first to actually launch a Greenland Ruby collection. And this gent had heard about this collection for a couple of years now, because it has, of course, been years in us building the mine and getting ready for marketing and introducing the gemstones into the market. So he went to work with launching his Greenland Ruby collection in his store in December of 2018. And as you can see, he's done an enormous amount of marketing in preparation. He did advertising, he did in-store, he even decorated the outside of his gorgeous boutique in Copenhagen with images of Greenland and images of these stones. And in fact, he came with me to Greenland a couple of months prior with a cameraman, and he made a beautiful video, which you'll also see on our website. And this gent really told the story. He reached out to every single one of his customers and said, "You need to get yourself into my store, because I am going to show you something that you've never seen before." And he knew he would be successful because he is an incredible marketer. But just how successful he did not prepare himself for. And 3 days before Christmas, his store manager sent me this picture of herself. They had sold out of their Greenland Ruby collection. 3 days before Christmas, they were taking orders. So, I mean, you can just imagine. And I love this picture. I showed in every one of my presentations, because this is an example of how retailers can really, you know, really step up and bring things bring pieces of jewelry to their customers that they've never seen before. But it is getting behind and something that they feel strongly about, telling a story, doing the work, the marketing, and creating beautiful pieces of jewelry, frankly. And this is a prime example, and this is our proof of concept. And we just thrilled, and this is what we're hoping to roll out to our customers here in the US and in other parts of Europe. Okay, I need to keep wrapping up. So of course, yes, we're talking about retailers, but also very, very important to speak to the one-of-a-kind designers, because these are the people that tell the story. I already showed you that magnificent ring by Eric Courtney. Well, Victor Valian is another example. He's also visited the mine. He's fascinated with gems of origin and fantastical origin. He has a beautiful collection of Greenland Ruby jewelry himself. Marla Aaron also loves the gems. She did this incredible bead necklace, which, by the way, is also sold. And yeah, but there we go. Storytelling with the designers is absolutely imperative when it comes to marketing. And of course, not to forget our, as another part of our marketing strategy, not to forget about our local population. You know, you can imagine that the people in Greenland have been waiting to see these gems for a number of years. And our office in Greenland has done a fantastic job of planning their own collections for Kita, and this is a local word for the region where these gems are mined. Which actually, I realize now that I forgot to mention that the mining operation is called Apalutok. You probably will see that in some of our online. It's a very, very long and complicated to pronounce word, but it is the Greenlandic word for red, and it refers to the rock in which these gems are found in that region. So going back to our marketing strategy in Greenland locally is creating this brand called Kita, and this will actually be the rubies from Greenland available to local people, of course, with the following pillars in mind: national pride, of course, everything comes with a certificate of origin, and we know that practically everybody that visits Greenland, and there's not that many tourists, especially now. Well, now there's no tourists, but you know, Greenland is a new frontier, and this is a part of the world where we do expect people to start visiting in hordes. We know that everybody that goes to Greenland is going to want to come home with one of their gems. I know I'm talking very, very fast, but I also want to tell you that our social media strategy is key to what makes Greenland Ruby also the gem for a new generation. We know that before anybody buys anything, they go online and they search and they look and they follow. And if you don't already follow our social medias, our Instagram and our Facebook, of course we have LinkedIn accounts as well, and Twitter, please do, because this is where we tell the most of our storytelling, and it's gorgeous. I mean, we've got a lot of information stored on those pages, and this is also what goes a long, long way in our storytelling. And what is so imperative as part of our digital marketing strategy. And yeah, it's just one of the reasons. As you can see, I have quite a few. But now to move on, because I am running out of time, especially if we want Q&A. What you're seeing here is e-commerce, and I've used this word on the slide, but hey, e-commerce is so 2019, I have to say, because what we are about to do in our e-commerce space or digital space is announce our Ruby Cloud, which is absolutely, there is no other colored gemstone mining operation that has digitalized their entire inventory and put it online for potential buyers. As we know, these last couple of months have been really a game changer for everybody. And how do we enable our customers and our potential customers to see what we have to offer? And we were already doing this. This is something that's been in the works for a number of months, but it has been fast-tracked, and the Ruby Cloud will be launched on the 11th of August at the JCK virtual trade show, which is another first for us in our industry. But we're very proud to launch our Ruby Cloud, which is our digital marketplace. It is our virtual showroom. It is our new age, new normal, whatever we want to call it these days. And who knows what our future holds. But it is our way of being able to show our gems, each and every one of our gems, be it ruby or pink sapphire, in every size, shape, color, price range, to any customer who is interested in taking a look. And of course, just within a matter of days, the gems will be shipped directly to them. And of course, Ruby Cloud will be accessible through our website, greenlandruby.gl. And in order to see pricing, one does need to have to set up an account. So that's vital. And again, this is another very, very high-tech way that the company is showing their face and creating our identity for this next generation of buyer, wearer, etc., who we know is going to be traveling a lot less. So in the old days, you know, jumping on a flight to Bangkok or to a trade show in Hong Kong, you know, we all have to rethink how that's going to happen. And this is our way of doing it. And I think everybody who takes a look at this is going to be suitably impressed. And right from the comfort of your home office, or you know, if you're working from home or back in the office. So that's a little bit of what I've got to talk about. I know I whipped through. I do hope everybody understood what I was saying. I have a very strange accent. I've got a lot of questions. As I said, I'm easily accessible. I'm at the end of my cell phone. I'm hh@greenlandruby.gl. But I think we have some time. So why don't, and also I have all of these questions, and like I said, we are recording, and I will get the notes from this session. So I will go back and answer all of your questions. Forgive me, our AC is not really working, and I'm using one of our rubies to cool down. But I will go back and answer all of your questions personally if we don't have time to go through them here in the presentation. But I think just because there are just a few of us on this call, that we should unmute everybody, and perhaps you could raise your hand if you wanted to ask something, and we can work on that, and I can get to as many of you as I possibly can within the next few minutes. We've got 10 minutes or so. How does that sound?
So everybody, you have access to now unmute yourself to ask questions and to open up the conversation. We do have a few questions in the group chat that were asked. One from Christina about blockchain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she asked, does Greenland Ruby use blockchain to track the chain of custody? If I buy from a dealer in New York City, how would I verify that the ruby is from Greenland?
Okay, so I touched briefly on that, and maybe that was a question from before I spoke on it. Actually, we don't specifically use blockchain technology, and I'm not a financial person, and it took me the longest time to really understand what blockchain really is. But it is another one of these buzzwords in our industry. But the simple answer to that is the gems from Greenland are easily identifiable as Greenlandic. So every gem is tracked and traced from the mine, and you know, we have to account for every single gem from its rough state through its cut and polished. And what we do is we give it an identity number from very, very early on. You know, it works a little bit like a family tree, and the identity number sort of gets broken down, you know, and the parcel gets split, and each gem gets tracked and traced through our online inventory system, and we are able to produce this certificate of origin, which relates to each and every gem that we produce in the mine. So this number that is, this is your gemstone number, and it is your gem's birth certificate, and that number relates back to the original export document from Greenland. So while this is not accessible to the consumer per se yet, it is done through our system, it is endorsed by the government of Greenland, and as I said, you know, the gems are identifiable as Greenlandic, so we know it comes from us. So actually, you know, we can bypass, I'm not really saying bypass, that's not really the right word, but, you know, we don't really need to engage with the blockchain technology or, you know, an inscription on the stone itself, because the inclusions tell the story of Greenland. And if it's from Greenland, it's from us. If it's from Greenland, it's likely got the certificate of origin, comes with a number, and yeah, track and trace it in a very simple way, and yet extremely, of course, you can imagine, logistically quite complicated for us to set that up and maintain it, but that is our way of tracking and tracing each and every gem from the mining operation. So I do hope that that answered your question. Any other questions? I mean, there's lots of questions, but Erica, if you are fielding these questions, is there anything else you would like for me to discuss? Because we just have a couple more minutes.
Sure. This actually is an interesting question. Are the stones being cut in Greenland as well?
No, they're not. In fact, that's a very, very good question. Like I mentioned, our gemstones go to Thailand for processing, because it's an important part of the final gemstone. And many of our gems get cut in Thailand. Some of them go to India, cabochons. So you can imagine we have a partner factory in India that is contracted to us. So we know that everything is kept sort of in-house. And the reason why it's not being done in Greenland is because our quantities are too great. And because we are the only gem producer in Greenland, and there is such a small population, you know, this is not something that is possible in Greenland yet. We are hoping that over time, you know, once and with the support of foundations like the Pink Polar Bear Foundation, we'll be able to channel funds for education, you know, workshops and things like this that will be developed over time locally. But for now, no, we do all of our processing and production in Thailand or in India with our partner operation.
Let's see. Are there any other questions you want to answer? Are there specific vendors, or is there a showroom in New York where somebody in the industry can check out the stones?
I invite you to my office. I'm in the district on 48th Street at the moment, and I am asking you please to, we are here, wear a mask, but I'd be happy to show you what we've got here in our safe, and to talk more about the gemstones and allow you to touch and feel and buy. And of course, I also mentioned our gem cloud, which is going to be up and running in just a couple of weeks from now, which is as true to life as it can possibly be, with the most high-tech imagery and 360 video, rotation video, not like anything you've seen in any other diamond or gemstone website. But to answer that question, no, we are doing it directly ourselves. I invite you to our office, and yeah, that's, please do, anytime.
I think the last really interesting question is, does Greenland Ruby have any special physical characteristics or inclusions that set it from other localities?
Well, I did also touch on this a little bit in my conversation, because on the one hand, we can compare the material to rubies and pink sapphires that have been found in other parts of the world with similar type primary deposits. On the other hand, this is a 3 billion year old host rock. So the inclusions, the impurities within each and every gem tell the stories of journey through time and temperature. So the labs, you know, at at a certain level are able to tell that those differentiations. Looking at the gem, no, not really. I don't think anybody would really look at one of them and say, oh, this is from Greenland, because you know, it's not that general, but it is really more about the inclusions of the material. So on the one hand, the material is similar to that found in other locations. On the other hand, we say this is material that cannot be compared with a ruby or pink sapphire from another location, just because it is so uniquely Greenlandic. It is so unique in its own identity and its own storytelling and its own birthplace. And yeah, so that's the answer. And the laboratories are able to tell the difference on gemological inspection.
That's wonderful. Does anybody have any other questions? You guys can unmute yourselves and start. And we have a few more minutes to start dialogue. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just going to scroll through here. And of course, my eyesight is not that good, so I'm looking to see. I've got lots of great comments. Thank you very much. I'm pleased. It looks to me like everybody sort of really enjoyed hearing the story, and it is absolutely fascinating. I must say, it's been fantastic, you know, working with this gem over the last couple of years and identifying, you know, what are the properties and how do we bring this gem into the marketplace. Please take a look at our website, our YouTube page. Our videos are absolutely incredible. Like I said, some of them are sort of more consumer facing, some of them are very sort of technical and gemmy, or you know, talk a lot about geology. Some of them talk about, you know, the responsible sourcing, and also our Pink Polar Bear Foundation is really such a great initiative. I'm really very proud of that, and I look forward to seeing how the Pink Polar Bear Foundation actually operates over the next couple of years with, you know, our partners, or, you know, also giving a percentage of their sales to the foundation, supporting local education in Greenland, supporting things like cultural events, or, you know, sporting, you know, sport teams and things like that, which goes above and beyond the gemstone industry, but is really very general, but certainly making a difference in the lives of the local population in Greenland. As small as it may be, you know, this is their gem, and we want to make sure that while we do offer it to, you know, make it available to people all over the world, that the local population really gets recognition and gets something back from that. Does anybody else have any questions?
Somebody actually asked what the host rock material is for the Greenland Ruby.
Yeah, well, it's Amphibolite. Amphibolite is a very, very hard host rock. And, you know, I am more of the romantic storyteller and not the geologist, but our host rock is Amphibolite. And you can imagine that being in a host rock material that's that hard, I can show you again. Mm-hmm. It's extremely difficult. It makes extraction extremely difficult. So, you know, there's a whole process of, you know, initially blasting to remove, you know, to separate the rock, and then through a process of crushing, through our processing plant. And again, it's best seen in video, which you'll see on our YouTube channel and website. It makes extraction extremely challenging. And the crushing process and the extraction, you know, removing this gem out of this rock, being in a primary deposit, doesn't happen through weathering over millions of years, like what happens in a secondary deposit. It is still in that rock that it's been growing for the last 3 billion years. Right. That's the simplest way for me to explain it. It's extraordinary, you know. And also the other thing with rubies that I should say is very, very interesting, or with our rubies, the rubies from Greenland. I mean, I refer to them like they're mine. They're not. They belong to the company. But the other thing is that, you know, in our industry, because rubies have been around for a very, very long time, very often rubies, you know, are on a sort of secondary market. They've been sold and bought and sold and traded and sold and bought, and, you know, over a long, long time. You know, it's very, very difficult to know exactly where these gems have come from, or how they were traded, or where. And what we can say, you know, with 100% surety, is that the Greenlandic rubies, or the Greenland ruby gems, have been mined within the last, you know, 2.5 years since the official opening of the mine in May of 2017. So whatever you're getting, whatever you're buying, or whatever you're looking at is literally brand new out of the ground. So we are, this takes a long, long time. Anybody who's involved in mining in any way knows that, setting up a mining operation doesn't happen overnight. It's an extraordinary venture. We have very patient investors. We have a very patient board, but they understand the importance of the marketing of these gems in a very succinct way. It has to be done properly. We're building a reputation. We're creating a market, which, as I said, and why I was invited to do this presentation, because the market that we're looking at is a new generation of gemstone and jewelry wearer and buyer.
Well, if anyone doesn't have any other questions, thank you, Hayley. This was wonderful, and thank you for your time and your expertise in sharing all your information with us. I learned a lot. I had a great time. And if any of you are interested in any other information, you can email WJA or you can email Hayley, and we will get you guys the information you need or put you in touch with the right people. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Hayley.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, ladies. Thank you. I was absolutely thrilled to be part of this. I hope you enjoyed yourselves this last hour. I hope you learned something. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out for me or send me an email. And by all means, please do take a look at our website and our social media, and like, share, and comment. And yeah, be a part of this journey. It's super exciting, and we are really on the edge of our market with this very new and exciting gem from Greenland. So thanks for being a part of it today, and take care, everybody. Wear your mask.
Bye, everybody. Have a great time. Thank you for joining. Bye, Hayley.
Bye.
Thank you.